everybody, and welcome back to 3-2 Brew. This is going to be our week 5 recap / analysis of the Project Goblin Guide, Premodern. So this week we kind of went with a different setup. I played 3 matches with one deck and then got some feedback from the comments on YouTube and then modified it a bit. So this is like I'm calling a version 1.7.1. But we ended up with an absolute banger of a week. We played quite a few matches. We played through a league. We went positive in the league, just barely missing out on a 5-1, losing to, I believe, Angry Hermit on just a heartbreaking. They had all the answers, and we had solutions. We just didn't have the speed and agility they did. But regardless, this deck is performing fantastically for me now. And I want to give an enormous shout out to Giuliano and Marco from previous videos. I believe it was Marco who recommended Mog Flunkies, and Giuliano as well. I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name. I'm a Yank, so I apologize. I'm really bad with names, but both of them gave some really, really sound insight, and at least recommendations, I should say. I didn't follow them to a T, but recommended Ancient Tomb and whatchamacallit. So I gave it a run. I was in a dark place with goblins. I've been in a dark place with goblins. But we'll talk about that in a moment here. Let's talk about this deck currently. This is definitely a little bit different of a look. I've taken the Matron down to a 2-of in the deck and gone up to 3 Mog Flunkies. I've also removed a Goblin Sharpshooter to the sideboard. Only own 1, gonna stick with just 1 in the lists. Ran a Goblin King in the main, went up to 4 all the way through for Lackey, Fanatic, Pile Driver, War Chief, Ringleader. That's just a glue holding everything together. Tinker is one of our flex spots. Goblin King's one of our flex spots. But yeah, down to 2 Matrons. The theory here is this deck then becomes much more aggro and a little bit quicker and a little bit lower down. We are removing the toolbox aspect of the deck to trim it down. And this is something that I believe complemented my playstyle a ton. I am not a toolbox player. Learned that the hard way, but alas, I'm not. So what I've ended up doing here as well is adding 2 Ancient Tombs. I've dropped Wasteland. Honestly, ever since the podcast with Will Hurst, when I got questions where he interviewed the Red Black Goblins player, and they were like, I'm not playing Wasteland, don't see a point in it. I can't really argue it. I don't think Wasteland's as impactful in this deck as a Port, to be entirely honest with you. I think Port is super, super, super impactful, but I just can't say that about everything. So, regardless, I ran 2 Ancient Tombs here. I believe I also went up to 2 Color the Claws in the sideboard and also did a 5 Pyroblast or 5 Blast setup. So let's talk about it. Let's actually talk about the data first. So this week I ended up playing 14 total matches, and with this deck I am at a 78% win rate. Yes, you heard that correctly, 78%. I mean, that is astronomical. Like, if you look at my week over week statistics, that's literally leaps and bounds above where I had been at previously. We were actually trending somewhat down. We had a small spike in week 3, and then we dropped back down to below par in week 4, but this week has been feeling a lot better. I didn't play as many games of version 1.6, so take that with a grain of salt. I think I only played like 5 games or 5 matches with it or something. But just through all this, I mean, we're at 14 total games, and we've only dropped 3. We dropped 1 to a Terrageddon. It was Green White Geddon. We dropped 1 to Sly and 1 to Angry Hermit. League, I dropped Sly and Angry Hermit. Green White Geddon was before we actually revamped the deck, as a heads up as well. We'll talk about Sly. We'll talk about Angry Hermit as well. Really, actually, Angry Hermit, we had a lot of great opportunities, and we just couldn't. They just picked our hand apart. Didn't have the answer. I had like the anti-haste hate for that thing they reanimate and multiple things. Just didn't work out for me. The Sly matchup, I ran into a bit of an issue with Ancient Tomb. So Ancient Tomb is fantastic in this deck, but in the matchup versus Sly, it's horrid. And I tried finding the comments, but someone had recommended weeks ago now on one of the videos that they like to put Zuron Orb in the main board or in the sideboard to fight off Sly. And I think with a double Ancient Tomb setup, that's actually fantastic. It's a really good idea. I contemplated with Ancient Tomb if I want one to be a City of Traders to just negate that health a little bit. But the more I thought about it, this deck does not want to lose its lands. It just doesn't. It does not want to lose them. It wants to hang on to its lands, and it wants to just do its thing. So I'm going to hang on to 2 Ancient Tombs. I don't want to risk it with the City of Traders, but I think I'm going to have to remap the sideboard a bit here to deal with the Zuron orbs. I want at least 2 orbs in. And let me also quickly hop over here and just drop down the deck version to 1.7. Let's check the notes real quick. It was the first time Oppo on one of these brews as well. Not a big deal. Could not find the pieces I need. Pardon my French, but I played Blue-White Standstill and won. So that's why you'll see such a comment as that. But when you look at these matches, Ancient Tomb won me game 3. Ancient Tomb felt like a house on the draw for accelerating. Game 1 Ancient Tomb was great. Game 2 was able to push through 3 siege gangs from the opponent. This was a mirror. I won 2-0. Granted, I was on the play game 1, but still, Ancient Tomb helped me accelerate to where I needed to go. But also just absolutely blew right through them. 3 siege gangs. This deck, my deck, pushed through 3 siege gangs. Not to be trifled with. Ancient Tomb both games was a killer in the matchup, but needed to bring back in orbs. That's our Sly matchup. That's okay. We can bring in Zuron orbs. You have 3 positives right here versus 1 negative. Color of the Claw as well. They were on a mono red mud deck. Color of the Claw was just absolutely nasty. I think that card is fantastic, especially in this build. I think 2 Color of the Claw is just correct. I'm also living in New England, which is apparently a very heavy landstill meta. Didn't know that for IRL events. Probably should have. But Color of the Claw is like a bang up. I just bought 3 of them. So I have them on hand. But Ancient Tomb felt super impactful. Crypt, I don't know if I really want to respect turbo stuff. I might just have to just be like, you know what, we lose to turbo whatever. And maybe leave a furnace or 2 in here. I'll have to think about it. Tranquil Domain's not going anywhere. That's staying as a 3 of. I don't care what anyone says. That's not changing. Sharpshooter, I'm thinking about swapping Sharpshooter in for Goblin King. Because I want to talk about Goblin King. To me personally, and I understand that I believe it was Giuliano or Marco who wanted me to run 3 times the Goblin King. I know a lot of people are really high on Goblin King versus Engineer Plague. If they stick 2 kings, Goblin King, or 2 plagues, no king comes out. I don't want to play multiple kings. It's a 3-drop. It doesn't have haste. It doesn't do anything other than just be a lord. It dies to shock. I don't know. I'm kind of not in love with it. That's one of my biggest issues with this deck. Is like, Goblin King doesn't do enough for 3 mana. Let's talk about our 3 mana plays. Gem Palm Incinerator is a removal spell. Conditional, but removal, and it replaces itself for 2 mana. Never going to cast this card out. It's fantastic. Goblin King just talked about Matron, Tutor. Much easier to cast as well. I can go turn 2 Matron. I can't go turn 2 Goblin King. And War Chief, just absolute lord. 1 less to cast, and all goblins have haste. So good. So good. They stack on top of each other. So yeah, I mean, I was thinking about it. In the mirror, Goblin King gives your opponent walk as well. Like, yeah, if you were able to drop and use it kind of like as a pseudo, whatchamacallit, who's the big beast that makes everyone +X for the number of creatures that goes in like a modern and legacy elves. Craterhoof Behemoth. You can kind of use it like a Crater Hoof Behemoth, but not really. I don't think it really counts, personally. I just don't think it has that much impact. What's another red deck? I mean, Red Mud, it's not bad against Red Mud, but they have quite a few of Master Cores. It just gets picked off for 4 mana. If you want to talk about Sly, it just gets gobbled up by Sly. Know what I'm saying? If you play against a, like a red-green deck, and they have Pyroclasm, like an Oath, you're done. You're grass. Because it's like, yeah, all your other goblins might be pumped up to 3/3s, but once Goblin King gets swept off its feet, it's a 2/2, then everything else dies. So, I don't know. I'm really not high on Goblin King, and I don't have a much better solution, but I think Goblin Sharpshooter is the correct answer. To slot back in. Frees up a sideboard slot. Pyrokinesis I haven't been as impressed by. I know this card is very good against elves. It's actually very good against burn as well. I still need to kind of figure it out. But yeah, overall, this deck's feeling really, really good. But we're kind of getting into crunch time here. We're coming into the 3rd week. So we are coming into, let's see. It'll be the 10th here. I'm recording very late. This will be releasing on today, the 9th. It's not actually the 9th till I go to sleep in my mind. We also have an enormous snowstorm. Want to shout out as well. Go Birds. I'm a huge Birds fan. Hope they take the Super Bowl down for all the US listeners. But yeah, we have the 1st is when I have my tournament for the monthly or for the quarterly. So we only really have 3 weeks left. This week here, I'm going to try and fine tune the list. I want to really feel it out. I want to see what I want as my position in just a raw 60. The sideboard something I'm going to begin to really craft, because all of this week into here, basically we'll get one more league in between, and I'm going to try and have a fully tuned deck coming into the league and see how it goes, get some feedback from my testing, and try and finalize the board before I have to submit my actual list. Like I said, we're in a very, very heavy standstill meta. A lot of people playing standstill in New England in paper. So I think I'm going to bring probably a pretty juiced up against sweepers. And maybe 5 blast is correct there, But yeah, overall, I think this deck has felt so good with these modifications. Giuliano, Marco, just two of the many people who've commented. Left comments. I've argued with you maybe even in the comments and just debated. I'm never mad, so please don't ever take it as me being angry, but I'm just trying to talk to you and understand, have a good conversation. There's an entire Discord thread for goblins on Discord. I had no clue. I have no clue. I'm very much a boomer when it comes to Discord. I'm not good at it. I never understood how it worked, really. I use it like very, very base level for like Dungeons and Dragons or what have you, to play with my group and to like share information or what have you. So once I found out there was a thread, big shout out to John from Maine for showing me that there was threads on there. He showed me the Dreadnought thread. Didn't even know that there was, like I said, had no clue it was a thing. Regardless, I'm going to deep dive in there and see what they've been saying, see what they feel. And just check it out. The final thing I want to note here, for anybody watching this video, it's kind of deep, I know by now, but Goblins is a deck that I think has 2 thought paths. One thought path is let's lay down an aggro plan, or at least more of an aggro tempo plan. And the other thought is like, let's lay down a turn 1 combo, or let's sit into a control toolbox roll and try and outvalue your opponent, which very much reminds me of like Pre-Fire Jund or Pre-Fire Rock, where you're trying to get incremental advantages based on the toolbox that you have in your deck. Sometimes, yeah, you can turn 1 combo, or really turn 2 combo, but it's not a Dreadnought. Doesn't guarantee you a win. If you go turn 2 hit with Lackey Siege Gang and they Pyroclasm, whoop-de-doo, So I definitely lean into the aggro camp, the aggro tempo camp. I'm not very good at toolbox builds, which scares me because I want to try pod and pre-fire, and that's a toolbox deck. But my brain doesn't think well for a toolbox. Maybe I'm not good enough at Magic, and I'm willing to accept that. But also, I just don't really care. I want my deck to execute a plan. And if that plan fails, that's okay. That's just a part of the deck building. Maybe I build it wrong. Maybe it's not the correct meta time for it. This deck here executes a plan. When I go to tutor, it's pretty straightforward. I'm normally grabbing a lackey, I'm grabbing a war chief, or I'm grabbing a ringleader. And on the very shy outside time, I'll grab a siege gang commander. If I'm already head on board, then it's a pile driver. But really, it's lackey, war chief, ringleader. Really, ringleader be the number one. War chief is a great way to get stuff moving, but ringleader just dropping in and finding you between 0 and 4 more goblins, just disgusting. And if you've Ancient Tomb, you can drop ringleader on turn 3. That's the even crazier part. Another card in the deck that I'm very in between on is Goblin Tinkerer. I don't want to hurt my ringleader, but I also would rather just run 1 Tinkerer and 3 Naturalize. I'm kind of in between on it, but I do like the concept behind it. It's a lot less dependent, but it's another miss for ringleader. I don't want to tempt God, you know? The ringleader sometimes screws me, but I don't want to tempt God with this. So yeah, everybody who watches these, I appreciate you. Everyone who's left me comments and feedback, I've taken them the best I could to heart and tried to try them out. Sometimes they work, sometimes they fail. And honestly, I'm so appreciative of everyone because this deck's starting to finally feel like I'm glad that I spent the copious amounts of money I did to buy the foils. Because it's beginning to feel fun. I don't dread this. And the mindset that I've been working on it a lot, trying to think positively when it comes to this, try to keep an open mind. You know, I've been trying to do a lot of like mental preparation. I think that helps as well, but I also just think this type of rendition for the deck fits me well. Flunkies is a very easy board. I'm a-okay boarding with flunkies. I just take them out. You know, sometimes they're just the worst card in the deck, and that's okay. That's really okay. Like I don't want to make cuts a lot of the time. I don't want to have to think on 5 different levels. Normally it's like, all right, 2 Tinkers and a Mog Flunky. Let's swap in our 5 blasts. You know, like it becomes very easy. It's a very easy board against Sly too, because it's like, all right, well, I need something to attack with flunkies, and they're just going to continue to remove my stuff. So take the flunkies out. Easy as can be. Let's bring in our pyrokinesis. Let's bring in a Phyrexian Furnace. Hopefully in the future it'll be Zoran Orbs. So yeah, it's become a much leaner deck, even though we only swapped a little bit. I think with Sharpshooter coming, it's going to be even leaner. Taking out the king. So I hope everybody enjoyed. I'm very, very hopeful for the future. I'm excited. Even if I stumble in this coming week, that's okay. I know this deck can win now. I'm confident in its ability to win. And I'm very excited to see what it can produce for me as time goes on. I'm very excited this coming weekend. I have a monthly out of Massachusetts I'm going to go down to get some paper play in. I need to work on my timing with paper play, thinking about my sideboards being mentally proactive and not just having a good time chatting with my opponent, as I often do. Because I do just often sit there and chat with my opponent because everyone's so darn nice. But yeah, let me know your thoughts down below. Everybody, I appreciate you all watching, genuinely. I appreciate the comments, good and bad. I love them. I really do. I love talking with you. I love interacting. I love this community. And the people who are a part of it are fantastic. So this has been 3-2 Brew. And until next time, cheers.